regulation is called the Kajiado Pest Management Regulation. The second regulation is the Tomato Crop Pest Regulation of 2025 Kajiado County. Now we'll share how Kajiado produce tomato, and one way is through association that are now used to monitor how this crop is produced. And if you're not producing within the guidelines, for example, when it comes to pesticide, then your license is withdrawn. You cannot grow tomatoes, for example, for a certain period of time. We're hoping to have that regulation published within this quarter, but the draft is already done. We've done the stakeholder part. We finished with that. That is one way that we can now start changing the conversation in a small way, as we mentioned, down there, without without waiting for the multinationals up here to change. The other thing that we are doing is on the market. We know that how we're changing this conversation is on the market. In the next coming 5 years, it will almost be impossible to trade outside. Hizi soko tunasema soko za Ruto. Everyone will be inside that market selling. Because it's one way of collecting revenue, I can tell you. One thing we are also pushing through that is to create market-driven demand. Is that for our markets in Kajiado, we want strategic spaces for organic farm and for organic produce. Now, I don't know if you would walk into a market where you see safe food and decide to go for the unsafe food. And now that hopefully will change the unsafe farmers' perception. To begin now saying that we are making a loss because now the people coming into this market are not buying our produce, they prefer this, and begin changing the story. But another thing is that we hope that those markets now can become centers of surveillance because everyone is selling inside. Now, PCPB, KFIS, whatever, this thing they are saying here that they have no control where this tomato is coming from. They have target places now where they can go. They can do tracing of where these tomatoes have come from, and we can begin changing the conversation around what comes to the market and ultimately what comes to the food. But that cannot happen if we as citizens don't take up the participation at the local level. So I really wanted to. There's so much I can say about it, but that is how I would wrap really that. Looking at it as a way we can move forward more than always crying about the problem.
Thank you, James. Thank you. You say you've been told stop crying about the problem. How many people have ever participated in a public participation?
Have you got this or others?
Any other? Good. So I'll come to the floor and share, and just to get your reflections of how that translates to the counties. So as we now touch on solutions and alternatives, I want to come to you, Ace. Yeah? You're now Ace. My apologies. So now, first of all, I think I want to understand why you chose to be a farmer and that route and how it's taking you. And if you have any produce for us from there. And also just a bit more on as a creative, yeah, because here we are creative, so we know what kind of talents and stuff that we can do, right? How do you, or rather, what is your advice to creatives on how we can use our space and our talent to advocate for things like what we've seen, food safety, how to improve our own food ecosystems, how do we speak against, how do we speak to the government rather, how do we distract, like what Charles has said, how do we create the noise to make sure that wanasikiliza, just using our art, because hii mambo nyingine ya scientist na research na data hiyo ni ya boardroom, si ndio? Tukishajua what they are saying huko juu, here mashinani, how do we use our talents to advocate for the same in a way that wananchi anaelewa?
Thank you so much for that question. It's Ice or Sidonic. Yeah. So I grew up in a small village in Kajiado. We are feeding the nation.
Clearly,
yeah. We grew up farming. That's what we did. And Kenyatta Nairobi is just cloud basically.
Hype.
But
Wow.
growing up, knowing farming and all of these things, you understand what you want to like go back to and do naturally. And so in 2020, I decided, hey, Nairobi imekuja sana, and I decided, hey, let me try and plant my own food, see where it goes. And when you start planting your own food, you realize you can do more. You can actually sell. It's like doing a hobby and then it becomes a business kind of